One day out from the Toronto Pro. You've been following our series. You've just seen me been carb loading this whole time, and today, one day out, don't have a lot to do except keep eating, finish off some tanning, and do a pump up routine. So first things first in the morning, what I do is I take my own pics, and since I'm coaching myself, I sit down, upload it all into my coaching system and start comparing pics and looking back at what I did the day before and what it translated to today's pic, and then kind of decide off that response what I should be making call-wise for today. So our past 2 days have been carb loading, and first day was 810 grams of carbs, 75 grams of fat, 300 grams of protein, and then yesterday was close to the same, except there was about 870 grams of carbs in, and I spaced out the meals different for digestion to be better. And so I felt a lot smaller waist this morning, easier to control the midsection, and also was up a pound. So the idea here is trying to find this best look on peak week, which kind of know is pretty close to this 233 mark. I'm trying to wake up a little heavier every day to be closer to that so I don't have to eat so much on show day. So we're moving that direction. However, a lot of this weight and carbs, they don't stick much. So based on this past data, coming up another pound, I'm gonna start the day off pretty close to what I did yesterday, and then just go meal by meal and adjust the carbs up and down and make sure I get my body weight up to about this 234, 235 at night, and that's dropping me back down to a good look for show day.
Yeah, so like when I pull up my comparisons, these are my fasted shots. So I look at the overall posing, which one stands out most, and you can, if you scan and look through them, this one has a lot more pop and detail and fullness to this shot, and you can see my abs are more detailed. There's more lines in my legs. I also like to look at my delts, like the roundness, and there's a lot more roundness in my front shot off this morning. So this is up 1 pound. So I pretty much would, if I could wake up on show day with this look, I could have enough meals and fluid into the show to be nailed right on. So basically I need to make sure I get enough food today to have a repeat look of this for tomorrow. It's so essential, like little cues in these poses that, like this morning my back shot looks, my lat spread looks significantly better. The only cue was like driving this shoulder down, which compacts this more, but it makes the width look so much greater. I have to do that on stage. Like, Renee, you'll have to yell at me, make sure your shoulder's down.
Yeah, because I'm a yeller.
You see the difference?
Mm-hmm.
It gives like that lower lat so much more outer sweep and fills in that shot. Like, look at the gap it fills in. But all it is like for me, like lat spreading and raising my shoulders at the same time, which I need to like protract and keep them like depressed, and that's when it looks awesome.
Are you actually harder today, or are you just fuller so it looks like you're harder?
I think that's it.
Yeah.
Get a good one in the face before I go out there.
then
This looks pretty solid.
okay, we do that back, that thing that you just did with your glutes again. Is there a technical name for
I
that?
don't know what I do with this.
Yeah. Like a little walnut.
Yeah, this is pretty killer. Look. Just walk on stage like this and look. Hear me? What I said?
For your routine?
Yeah. Just a run through.
You watched your routine.
I did, so I have an idea.
Why don't you just go through it and see what it looks like?
Yeah, reapproach and play. I'm gonna like walk out to it, I think. Which we're coming from the
Coming from the
right side of the stage.
I hate coming from the right side.
Cool. I'll do that then. When you've done it for 5 years in a row, you can do the routine.
No, that was great. I don't think you need to tweak anything. Even your floor work looked really good
Yeah.
for not, practicing it.
Then you can stretch. Just give me one of these. All right, let's go.
All right, my question is, are you gonna be able to do it okay without your socks? I know the socks give you some grip, right?
I didn't pay attention to what the stage floor was.
I think it's that rubber floor.
Plenty like where I squeeze and it looks.
Yeah, everything looks really good.
Can you see the back shot video?
Yeah.
It was a different lighting position, right? Last time. All right, so we had 2 meals in, and it's been about the time I'd probably go on stage for show day. So again, like that's what every day this peak week is about, is inching closer to a peak look and finding that look on one of these days and associating the visuals with the body weight and the meals and the fluid and just repeat that on show day. So I have all this data that makes it easy to make the decisions. So I've honed it down pretty well. That's still at about 3/4 of a gallon in of water. And my meals are a little bit smaller today, but 2 meals in, the look is great. Like I could walk on stage like this, like I need fluids. People that like wake up looking crispy and then cut fluids or take diuretics, they just keep getting flatter. And you also need to be able to go through rounds of posing as well. And I keep coming to life as well. So this practice pump up that we just did in here was to try to simulate what I would do backstage. And within 6 minutes, doing 2 rounds of pump up, which was a lateral, a tricep exercise, had a bicep curl, and then kind of like a across the chest fly. Just 2 rounds of that. Pumped to go on stage and not be gassed. Cardiovascular wise easier for pumping too much, and it could last the whole time for sure. So it doesn't take long to pump up. But now I know what I need to do for show day. So all the guessing and like what should I do backstage, what do I need to eat or drink, like all that's gonna be sorted out when I already walk and wake up on show day and walk out on stage. Like I know the plan going in. So this day is just kind of confirming things from the data that I've collected.
I asked you some questions off Instagram, and so I collected these questions and all about peaking to dive into these of what I'm doing one day out and give you some insight, and also just to give you some value back, and maybe you can take away and utilize in your own preps, or if you're coaching other athletes for their preps. Question number 1. We've got a lot of questions. Could be more than just one question on just manipulating water in general and what I do. And with going into peak week, the idea is trying to hold as many variables constant as you can to where the day of peak week, 7 days, 8 days out, whenever you've gotten the fat off, you do have a consistent water intake, electrolyte intake, and you can see what that looks like. And that kind of starts your assessment of, do you even need to manipulate water to begin with? Because if you have a moment of the day where you wake up, you look like you could walk on stage, then you probably shouldn't be manipulating water. Or maybe you find that, hey, after I drink 70 ounces of water and I go train, I look phenomenal. It's like, there's a good insight into what you should be doing with fluids, is having that same amount and going and train. So I keep, when I go into my peak week, like for this peak week, 2 gallons of water. My sodium, potassium has been set through my diet, which I'm usually getting about 8 to 9 grams of sodium, 4 to 5 grams of potassium. That's all through foods. The sodium is in addition, also through condiments, and I track this through Chronometer. But these are held constant. I'm not looking to adjust these. I just want these constant variables moving through peak week. And then what I want to master and skill is moving up carbohydrate, as that's the most impactful thing to changing the way that you look. So if you have enough water present, you'll be able to carb load completely sufficiently. The issue arises when people start doing drastic water cuts and start trying to carb up, and most people go flat. So I would say if you're starting out in this, keep your water and sodium up higher. You'll adapt to that, and start the assessment process earlier on your peak week. And don't assume that you have to manipulate water is one thing. And every day of peak week, you're trying to assess how much fluid you look your best at. So you'll start light in the morning, and as you eat and get more fluids in, your weight is gonna come up, and you'll find some balance of looking full and hard at the same time. And there you go. That's what you should be doing with your fluids. Now, there are cases where some people do retain water, especially using PDs, and that's stuff to sort out 3 to 5 weeks out, to when you arrive in peak week, you're not also having to deal with that issue as well. And then this probably gets into the second question, which is managing fatigue and stress on peak week. Because another thing that can drive water retention is cortisol rise. And people have stress just in general, also poor sleep, also high amounts of training. They're doing lots of cardio, and all that leads to just this keep escalated fatigue, which definitely can cause some water retention. And so that's one other area we want to address before we even try to get in peak week, why it's important to be ready early. And when you have all the fat off, then you can start reducing that stress variable from the physical stress. So when I get into peak week, there's no cardio present, and I'm already on a very manageable amount of steps. So my step count's like 8 to 10,000, something I could easily do in the off season and not create a lot of fatigue. Then as I get closer to the show, like one day out, I'm like 6,000 to 7,000 steps. I walk 10 minutes after meals just for digestive purposes and keep moving and have some degree of output. Other things that have like made preps a lot easier as I've gone is getting to shows early and also getting to shows at reasonable hours that I'm awake. So not getting up insanely early because you're in a very delicate state. I see people book flights at like 6 a.m. They have to get up at like 3 a.m. to get ready. And then that's one whole night that they're sleeping less. And then a long day of the same food intake, which creates another psychological stress of being hungry all day. Then you have to readapt to wherever you're going sleep-wise. So trying to have the most consistent routine present in your peak week, get to your show early, and also planning well in advance the things that you're gonna need. So like Renee and I, we pre-pack most of our food. We just pay $50 for an extra luggage or fly an airline that has extra luggage and bring all your food prep stuff with you or your cooked meats and veggies to where you don't have to run around to the store, cook, they're out of stuff or they don't have your normal foods. You want all these things taken care of so when you get to your show, your hotel room, you can just chill and hang out. It's low stress. Then the psychological aspect of it too is that focus on things that you can control, enjoy the moment that you're in. Finally getting here, you're about to get on stage, enjoy this process. Don't be stressing over what everyone's posting on Instagram and who you think's gonna be beating you or what the judges are gonna be thinking. Those are the non-controllables. You literally can't change a thing about it. So don't put time and effort into them. Put time and effort into enjoying the moment that you're in and just feel fortunate that you're able to bodybuild. So through those things, that's already gonna taper down fatigue and also have a part to deal with the water retention aspects some might have. And I've had people that I peak, we don't even raise food up during peak week. We don't even change water. We simply drop fatigue and they look amazing. So your peak doesn't have to be complicated. Question number 3, how do I decide on calorie and carbohydrate changes? So by far, like the greatest thing that's gonna be changing your physique is carbohydrate. So I hold a lot of these variables constant and the carb loading process can absolutely bring a physique up, but realize it's gonna vary vastly for your need. For one, your division need. Do you have a high muscularity division like bodybuilding or are you in something like bikini? Also, how depleted are you? You might need to fill in more carbohydrate with someone that's been digging down hard into a show versus someone that was already ahead that was already eating up higher. Then also, what is the response if you had refeeds that occurred? I have so varied individuals where some need 3 to 4 times their baseline diet. Others just add in 20% and weight jumps up the next day. So based on the response of what I've been documenting all prep for these individuals and myself, kind of guides me of an idea of how that person might need a loading process. And there's lots of ways to do this. Some people say peaking isn't a science. It's not. We have some good like theoretical evidence around what might be good approaches, but if you work with see the great prep coaches work, a lot, it gets the job done, but what makes a great coach is one that's assessing the need first. And so first off, you start your peak week, and that's those things that you're gonna assess is, what is the baseline diet, what does the division need, and what was the response to previous peaks or carbohydrate amounts in the refeeds. So for myself, I was already ahead, so I've had my maintenance calories up at 400 grams of carbs per day. I've done refeeds on prep from the 500 to 600 carb range, but that was also in mind that I needed to keep dieting. So I wasn't trying to push this really high and load. I also have previous prep data from not long ago, and that was using 800 to 900 grams of carbs for around 2 days. So I have a pretty good rough idea off my own past experiences of what I need to carb load with. Things that I've changed that I've learned from the past as well is that 2 days sometimes is not enough for me. And I am getting a lot of food one day out, which I don't want to do because then I wake up really with my stomach heavy. So for myself, I now start 3 days out carb loading. And with that 800 to 900 gram amount, hit it for 2 days. Then that last day, I can ideally bring the food down, but every peak can be a little bit different. And so you have to adjust kind of meal by meal. And that's when it makes a good peak, is when you have a coach that can be attentive. So for myself, I like doing a backload, have carbs at maintenance, and then I bring carbs up, I load, then I have the option to bring them down if I'm getting a little too full. All right, question number 4 is, what are still my uncertainties or worries going into peak week and into this show in particular? And a few things, like I mentioned earlier, like you don't know how you're going to do, but there's always a bit of you of that doesn't go away. You're always thinking about what's your potential and how you're going to do. And also it's more of a strategizing, right? Who you're going to be standing next to and how you might be wanting to peak your physique. Do you want to play more into your condition or fullness based around these individuals you might be standing next to? And there's uncertainty of how they're going to show up, right? So you're trying to still take your best guess at what's going to be the best physique for you on show day. And it's very subjective, and there's a range there. So you can control those variables very well, but you still won't have the exact answer until you're out that on stage of what that was the best physique-wise for you. Other issues that I've had that seem controllable, but stuff happens, is with my tanning process. I've always had a struggle with it, and some people don't. And this has been one of mine. I've get on stage with just terrible tans before, with poor last-minute choices I've made, where in Legion I used this glaze, and I had too much top coat of tan on, and the glaze ended up smearing, and I got really like splotchy, and it just looked terrible on stage. Gone on stage with not enough oil on, I mean, you name it, not dark enough. So try to do my best this show to change this. And Renee and I have been doing self tanning with Pro Tan base coats 3 days out, put it on, rinse the next day, another coat, rinse the next day. And then 1 day out, I'm going to the actual show tanner to have them do a final coat, sleep in that, wake up, have their final base coat, they bronze or they put on. And I should be dark because I already have a really, really good base now. So I shouldn't need so much coats of tan that I've had in the past to where it gets muddy. And then also we're not using a glaze that someone puts hands on you and smears. We actually have like an aerosol glaze that's worked well in the past. So, and I have Renee coming backstage with me to do it. So that's as controlled as I can get in thinking it out, but there's an uncertainty still in what that's gonna look like when I walk out there. I'm gonna try to have Renee run around to the front, look at me as I first go out, then run back and say, okay, we need to put more on, you look great, or take some off, and try to tweak it in that way. So those are a few things, but again, I think the mental side of it, there's still a bit of it you're never gonna go away, of questioning the potential and how you're gonna do, but just still enjoy the process. Going into my open debut at Legion, it was definitely stepping into a different territory, and there almost didn't have to be an expectation of me because I'm just the 212 guy, right? So you're kind of the underdog in a way. So you could be last and you're like, well, you're 212, you know, or you could do really well and surprise people. And I surprised myself. So even coming from 212, I hung really well in there. I got second in my open debut, and which is phenomenal. I, of course, trained to win these shows. That's always in my mind. And I wanted to see the best version of myself too when I did that open show, and I absolutely think it was. It was a clear validation that I made the right choice in doing this. Now, and one goal that I've always had for myself is I never want to get on stage without showing improvements or getting on stage in a way that I would be dissatisfied with or have regrets about. So I have done that. And so going to this show, I need to make sure like those improvements have been there, which basically was more development. My condition's good. I have a balanced physique. And I had a stellar off season, and I think it was worthy to bring to stage sooner than taking a long period of time off. So when I did Legion, I was about 221, 222. Now I'll get on stage here at 231, 232, 10 pounds heavier with pretty short off season period from October now to June. So again, the main goal is seeing out the best bodybuilding version of myself and just looking like I nailed it once, where I could look back on these pics and be like, yep, like you achieved it at a high level. That doesn't have to be placing, because you never know who's going to show up. You stand next to Derek Lunsford every show and you're like, man, I never won. That could be discouraging. But if you look at it from a point of view of you're always beating yourself, that can be very inspiring. And I just want the self-satisfaction of achieving the right look that I'm happy with. And being a bodybuilder, who knows, you probably never achieve that exact look, but I'm extremely happy with one day out and the physique that should be displayed on stage, hoping it translates how I envision it. But that's what I want, just to put that old Legion version to shame, in a sense. Just completely annihilate it and walk out there and have everyone else see it too. And hopefully that translates to the Olympia qualification, as that would be my ultimate send-off of competing, just walking onto Olympia stage in the open. So that is the goal outside of my own personal endeavors.
So ending this evening, went over, got my final coats of tan. Looked super dark, so I'm hoping this tan really does play out well for the stage. Wrapping up this evening, and just have 2 more meals to get in. Just kind of monitor my body weight, make sure that I'm getting close to that 235 mark before bed, which every day has been kind of like Groundhog's Day. It's been pretty predictable, so should be able to wake up on show day, have the weight right where I want, the visuals, and lead that right to stage. So super excited for the show day and look forward to sharing that day all with you too.